Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. It is dark. It is super early. It is a Wednesday morning, which means in the current month of April, it is time to dive into some MCU goodness, and goodness me, this might be one of the best episodes of television that Marvel has ever done. I know we don't have a super long history. We've been doing the TV for about a year. But, it is far and away one of the most special things that I have seen them do with television. And, anybody that comes after comic book content, whether it's, TV or movies, this is the type of thing that you throw back in the faces of those people that say, "Oh, these movies are just, they're just popcorn flicks," or they're just, they're a roller coaster ride. This is art that we get this week, and I mean, wow, just wow. So let's not waste any time. Why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat? We are getting ready to dive in, spoiler free, into Moon Knight, episode 5, Asylum. And that's right, man. We are coming down the home stretch of Moon Knight, and we've only got one episode left after this one. And like I said, this is one of the most special episodes of anything, or just most special things that Marvel has ever done. I have been commending this show on a week-by-week basis, specifically the last couple weeks, in how this show continues to just take on the aspect of mental health head on, right? Like, you're dealing with a character that has a dissociative identity disorder. You're dealing with a character that you don't get DID without some sort of trauma. This is a character that has dealt with a lot of trauma. And we've had hints to some of the trauma that Mark has gone through in these first 4 episodes. But this is the episode that really dives into what he is doing and what is going on with him, and why he is where he is as far as being a person goes, and how they are approaching just the mental health stuff. I mean, this episode in particular, mild spoilers. I mean, the episode's titled Asylum. We ended the last episode in an asylum. We're in the hospital for a really good stretch of this episode. And just the way in which it just deals with all of the things that go into what make Mark who Mark is at this point in time in his life is just expertly done. And massive, massive, massive shout-outs. I've been saying, Jeremy Slater, I need Jeremy Slater back. The writing just hasn't felt as sharp as that first episode. Rebecca Kirsch and Matthew Orton just delivered the best episode of the season, and arguably, like I said, one of the best episodes of television that Marvel has ever done. This thing was magical to watch. I have been recording my reactions like I do for all of these shows. I am just very slow in the editing process and getting them up. I have a backlog of a ton of things that I need to get up from a reaction standpoint that date back quite some time. But I've got almost all of them. I've got, this week and last week still to edit. Hopefully today or tomorrow, maybe we'll start getting some of those up along with some of my spoiler thoughts. But when you watch, when that reaction video for episode 5, Asylum, comes out, you're going to see the Seaman cry a lot. This episode connected with me emotionally in a lot of different ways, and some of them are not direct, right? Like the things that Mark is going through in the episode are not things that I have necessarily gone through, but there are elements to what Mark goes through in this episode that do connect with other things that I've gone through, where it just, the emotional beats connect. And even if, all of the writing this season hasn't been super, super sharp, the one thing that has been really, really well done from jump is the character development, right? And just these characters in general, what Oscar Isaac has brought to Marc and Steven, and Moon Knight and Mr. Knight, has us really invested in these characters. And over the first 4 episodes, you maybe don't even realize how invested in this character you are until you go through this episode. And I am very, very, very tied to Marc and Marc's story and what he's going through, and the emotions in this episode hit. But the other thing that Kirsch and Orton do really, really well with this episode, and it's one of the things that I always talk about with Marvel, in how great they are and what makes Kevin Feige so special, is the adaptation of the material. After seeing last week's episode end inside of an asylum, I knew that there was this run, at least the 6-episode run that happens in an asylum, that came from Lemire, Smallwood, and Belair. I've been reading that run past those 6, and just a lot of the vibes that you get from Lemire's run in general. You have this not always knowing what is real and what isn't real, and when Marc is in reality, or if it's Steven in reality, like the way that they play with the characters, how you can have them all come together and interact. Just a lot of things that come from that run overall, but specifically that 6-issue run at the start, that you see present in this episode in different ways. And one of the things that I think Kirsch and Orton do really, really well story-wise this week is making you second-guess yourself continually, right? Like, we're comic book fans, we're superhero fans, we want Moon Knight in the MCU, and I think we're all pretty much in agreement that what has been happening with Moon Knight and what's being posited as reality in the show is reality, and this asylum place is not reality. And the show in general has done a really good job in making you second guess what's real and what's not real, because you don't necessarily see what Marc or Steven are seeing all the time. But this episode in particular just really makes you second guess whether or not he is actually in a mental institution. And that's something that Lemire run really nailed. Like, when they're in that mental hospital in the comic, one minute you're in the middle of Moon Knight action, then all of a sudden you're back in a hospital, or like there are characters going, Marc, like, snap out of it, man, like, this is where we are. And you really don't always know, like, is the hospital real or is the Moon Knight story real? And this episode does that the best of any of the episodes. And obviously, specifically being in an asylum, it really handles that aspect. Like, I don't know. I don't know if the Egyptian gods and the Moon Knight stuff is reality or not in this show. I feel that it probably is, because for the long run of the MCU, you want Oscar Isaac around. It's really possible and probable and more likely that is the stuff that's real, because we need that stuff for future things. But if this is a genuine legitimate limited series, which I believe is what it's been posited as, Marvel could be doing this thing where they're just taking the concept of Moon Knight and adapting it in a way to tell a very specific story about a very specific group of people, and how that handles mental health and all these other things that the show is just dealing with. Like, it could all be an exploration of that is what this show is about, not about tying it into the MCU. That being said, we had a Madripoor drop 2 weeks ago. We get another pretty big MCU tie-in piece this week that I thought was really cool. So I think it's obvious that this is our reality. But Kirsch and Orton really, really understand that concept where, like, you're just like, I don't know what's reality. And all I know is that I just care a lot about this person and you want to see them get well. And that, in and of itself, is a magic trick, right? Because this is a fictional character. And you're sitting here going, I don't know what's going on, but I want this person to be okay. And I think that's just the thing that elevates the quality of this episode into one of the more special things that the MCU has done in TV thus far. The other reason that this episode is so friggin' phenomenal is the acting continues to be some of the best that we've had. I mean, this is right up there with Hiddleston during Loki and Olsen during WandaVision. What Oscar Isaac is doing in this show, I mean, it's what acting is about. Like I said, this episode is a piece of art. And a lot of that has to do with the performance that you're getting from Isaac. I mean, you want to talk about emotionally going to lots of different places. And we've seen Isaac go to a bunch of different places emotionally thus far. We scratch the surface in that category, man. This week, you see him go to some places. And just the performance as Mark, the performance as Steven, it's spectacular, man. I mean, it is just mesmerizing to watch this guy. And it's one of these things where, director Mohamed Diab, who directs this episode again and again, you can tell just from the way the camera is moving and the way this thing is being told that it's him behind the camera, crushes it. I think this is the best directed episode of the season as well. But it's one of those things where he talked about pushing Isaac to do both in one take rather than shooting, Mark and Steven separately. And it's one of those things where I feel like they shot this show chronologically because it feels like Isaac's performance gets better and better the more comfortable he is with these characters. And I think this is the most comfortable that we've seen him from a performance standpoint be with these characters. I think he is very locked in. He is very in tune. And the ability to go in and out of the two, and because of the way that this episode is structured, just what you're getting. I mean, you're getting like double Isaac a lot in this episode. But what he is doing legitimately is magical. And then the real only other big call standout this episode is Ethan Hawke. And what Ethan Hawke is doing in this episode is just tremendous. Because Dr. Harrow is very different than Arthur Harrow. But, just under the surface of what Dr. Harrow is, you still feel those Arthur Harrow vibes, and very, very two different versions of the character, but you can see how that cult leader, evil, sinister aspect of Harrow even is creeping into the Doctor version of this. And like I said, without spoiling anything, this episode takes place in the Asylum for the most part, so we do get more scenes of Hawke as a doctor talking to Mark and Steven, and just his approach. He really just nails everything that they give him. And while we don't get May Calloway this episode, I think what Hawke provides from a supporting standpoint is really strong. Some of the minor characters that are popping up in some of the things that are going on in Mark's story, really well executed. That hippopotamus lady, I can't remember the name of the god. They mentioned it a couple times in the episode. But she's fantastic. I mean, visually, I feel like all the money went into this freaking lady, man. She is spectacular to look at, man. Like, she's on that Conchu level good in the visual effects and just the hands. Her hands were freaking me out during the episode. But everybody that comes in from an acting standpoint supports here. But in this one, more than any of the others, is really all about Oscar Isaac and just what he is doing. Like, this is probably the peak of what we're gonna get from him. Because I feel like we have a lot to accomplish next week, which is one of the worries that I have continually with these Marvel shows. Like, I feel like we're 1 or 2 episodes short of what we should be at. And because I think next week is going to have to cover a lot and handle a lot of things to wrap this show up correctly, I think that's going to make it tough for it to top this one. And like I said, this is just a special episode in general. Mohamed Diab is really good from behind the camera here. Again, someone else who, like, as you watch this show move and go, the more comfortable Diab has gotten behind the camera with how this show is operating. I think this is some of his best work. We get those inverted, like, spin pans a lot in this show. the one they put in there this week, wow, that was a cool one. So like, I mean, the technical stuff is just really, really on point. Like I said, the visual effects here, the editing in the show has been phenomenal. And this episode in particular, because of the way that you're jumping around and transitioning and moving and going to all these different places, the editing is just spectacular. And at the end of the day, I mean, it's a no-brainer. I didn't ask for the Sea Maniacs to come up, but I will put them there in post, obviously, so I can just flat out just tell you this is a 5 out of 5 for me. I think this is one of the best episodes of Marvel television that we have gotten to date, and this is the type of stuff that just makes you excited about what superhero and comic book media can do. You know what I mean? Like, this stuff might be made for kids. You know, might start as cartoon drawings, you know. But, like, you can do really special things telling these stories because of the depth of these characters and the wealth of stories. Like, and this is the epitome of that. This is, honest to God, is one of the best things I think Marvel has done to date. So, there you go, man. Those are all the Seaman's non-spoiler thoughts. If I say anything else, it might ruin something for somebody. But the emotions are high in this episode. I think it emotionally really connects. The way that they're taking on the mental illness stuff head on, and specifically, I mean, the most to this point in the show is this week. It's just been a really special ride, and quickly, like I've said each week, this thing is just moving up the ranks in my Marvel television shows, and it is going to be in a slugfest between Loki and WandaVision and Moon Knight on any given day for what's at the top. But if they can even approach, you know, a fraction of what this episode is next week, this thing is gonna be a slam dunk win, man. So I'm pumped. This was one of my favorite episodes, like I said, just in general, and I'm psyched to see what we get next week. I think next week could be wild. I feel like next week needs to be like 90 minutes long. I feel like there's so much to do, and I'm really interested to see how they handle it. I think we're going to have some of our stronger people on the creative end back this. I think Jeremy Slater comes in for this episode, and we'll probably have Diab behind the camera again. But, yeah, I mean, this show is just, it's really working for me. So that's all I got. Now I want to know what you're thinking, man. What are you thinking of Moon Knight? If you have watched this episode, please keep it spoiler-free. But where does it land for you? You know, where does it land in the litany of this season? Where does it land in the litany of the MCU television stuff? This episode connect with you emotionally? Was this a special episode of television for you? I want to know those things and what was popping without giving anything away. There's some big spoilers in this episode, so don't hit those buttons. But let me know what you're thinking. If you haven't watched the episode, have we gotten you stoked? Or have you been enjoying Moon Knight, hearing that this is the best episode thus far? Does that get you excited for this week? Anything that you got, man. Good, bad, indifferent on Moon Knight, specifically episode 5, Asylum. Down below in the comments section. Look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to be here anytime. Talk movies, TV, trailer reactions. You want to be here for the rest of my Moon Knight coverage next week. Like I said, we're going to get up some of those spoiler thoughts and reactions. You want to be here. You want to see a soon-to-be 36-year-old man cry on camera. You just want to show a little love and support to that guy, and you haven't yet? Well, hey, come join Sea Maniac Nation. Super easy. Just jump over there. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that little bell if you want those alerts. And until next time, for the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down, I've been the Seaman. I'm signing off. Peace. Oh, hey, what's going on? You must be sticking around because you're looking for more content featuring this guy. Well, guess what? You're in the right place. You can check out more videos right here and right here. And if you have and you want to come join that Sea Maniac Nation, you can hit that subscribe right over there.